Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt Podcast. I'm Senator John Johnson, and today we've got Sabin Howard with us. And Sabin, I'm really excited for you to be here. I mean, I hear this comparison of you being the new Michelangelo for, and you had just finished a monument.
Yeah.
In Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and the inspiration behind it?
I've been sculpting for 42 years on the East Coast with a deep tradition in Italy since I grew up there as well. So great love for the Italian Renaissance and Greco-Roman art. And then back in 2015, I entered this global competition for a national memorial, the World War I Memorial. Out of 360 teams, we won that. And then I proceeded in the next 9.5 years, this epic journey to make a 60-foot long bronze wall with 38 figures that weighs 25 tons, and it sits 150 yards from the White House.
Wow. I saw some pictures of it. In fact, we'll bring some up on the screen, but it's amazing when you look at the story that you tell in that monument.
Yeah.
It's almost like the hero's journey, right?
It is the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, where someone leaves, a soldier, a dad, and an allegory for the United States, leaves his family, enters into battle, and is transformed, and then returns home to hand his daughter his helmet, she is the next generation, World War II.
And where did the inspiration for that come from?
Look, I'm not the same man that I was when I began the project. This was a learning experience, on-the-job training, and the first year after I'd won it, I went through 9 months of 25 iterations and took 12,000 images of different poses in models dressed in original uniforms that had seen combat, in nurses' uniforms as well, and I kept posing them and putting them together, and finally, after 9 months of a very arduous, labor-filled, incredibly focused journey, I came to the final composition, and I was given the green light to do the drawing. And that drawing began the voyage of making 2 models, and then eventually sculpting every single millimeter of that 60-foot long wall, made by hand, not computer, by hand, by heart, and my soul. And I brought everything I had to it.
It's fascinating to look at it, to look at the expressions on people's faces, to look at you can tell that they really went through a lot.
Yeah, it's an homage to humanity. And by the midpoint of the sculpture, I worked from life models. I went out and got real veterans that had seen combat. Even some of them had tried to commit suicide and survived. And they are, those faces, those Rangers, those Marines and Navy SEALs, their faces are indelibly etched on that wall and will beat mortality. So when you go look at the memorial, you're actually looking at the energy of combat veterans and their lineage to World War I.
So what was the process that you went through to come up with that? Where did those thoughts come from?
The thoughts are that, look, first of all, you don't see sculpture today that's a story. You see a lot of static figures, and I realized immediately that you needed to make something that was like interesting to someone who's not into art. What's the most important type of art form today for general public? It's the movies. So I made a bronze movie that was unfold as you walk from the left to the right. It's time, and each scene folds into the next scene, and everything's integrated. And so philosophically also, this is very in connection with the idea from the Renaissance that this is one unified universe, and all these parts fit together in a whole that hierarchically fit together. We're not fractured and separated. And here's the irony of the situation. World War I demarcates in the sand. After 22 million people are decimated, it's a new way of seeing humanity and the human condition. Sartre and Camus come into play. We're alienated beings. We're completely separated from each other. And so I'm going back to the way things were 120 years ago and making a memorial to commemorate those soldiers and show how things once were. And I believe this is the beginning of the American cultural renaissance.
That's an interesting point. I mean, let's go back to Italy and your life there. What was the foundational things that got you to where you are today?
Well, look, I was born in New York in 1963. And then at 3 months, because my mother didn't have a green card, we went back to Italy. I was there till I was 3. So my formative years, the way my hard drive was set up, came from those 3 years. And I was engulfed by beauty, visual splendor, where humanity and the scale of the buildings around us in urban centers have something to do with the scale of human beings. And the sense of connectivity that you have in piazzas where people congregate and have conversations, that was what drove me almost 42 years later to make this memorial, because it's about connectivity. And so this is one of the things that I brought forth. And I come back to the United States, New York, and you're in the Vietnam area, and it's like, don't trust the man. Nothing is what it is. And think outside the box. So I could not have done this unless I had this weird concoction of tradition to visual splendor, and then this other part, which is like, you can be anything that you want to be. And that's the freedom of the United States, the ability to choose and manifest your destiny.
So where were you trained? What schooling did you go through? Where did you get these skills and this mindset?
At 19 years of age, at 4 p.m. on October 21st, I remember it really well. It was a Thursday afternoon because I started work on Monday. I told my cabinet-making boss in South Philly, I quit. And he goes, you can't quit. And I said, yeah, I can't. I just can't. I quit. And he goes, well, I'm not going to pay you. And being the 19-year-old brat that I was, I give him the finger and I walk out the door and I make a call to the Philadelphia College of Art and I ask them, how do you get in art school? And they said, well, you need a portfolio. And I said, what's a portfolio? Bear in mind, I can't draw. And I want to be an artist. And I want to make Renaissance art. Because I don't know that this is modern art thing going on. I think it's like Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael. And so I go over to the school and this lady tells me, get drawing on the right side of the brain. I get the book immediately, go home, and I sit down and I do the first exercise. It's drawing something on the other side of the room. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's like learning to walk. So I'm very persistent. I'm very stubborn, and I take a task and I just continue. That's my nature. Go back to the school after 90 days, 90 drawings in my hand, show it to this lady. She goes, you're going to get in. She pulls out 10 of them. And well, how do you know I'm going to get in? And she goes, because I'm the director of admissions. So I ended up in the best school in the United States, probably in the world at that time, because of the teachers that I had. It's 1982, and we had a system of looking at the figure and then translating the figure, life models, into sculpture using an armature. An armature is what you put the clay on. The armature is articulated like a skeleton, and it's the same proportions as a skeleton. So you're deducing reality. You're not doing it on feel. You're going on real scientific knowledge. So that's my basis. That's my structure. And from there, then 80,000 hours, 2,000 hours a year of looking at life models and then drawing and sculpting them brings me to this moment in time talking to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So have you been back to Italy?
I go back almost every year. It's my first language. And I finished this memorial and I got to a place where it was like, well, now I'm going to go back to Italy and live there. And I went back and I realized that I still wanted to do more because I'd learned so much making this National World War I memorial. And I came back to the United States and then started my search, and Utah is the best place to make a monument because it is one of the most freeing, God-sacred filled places where government is not the primary thing, but God is the primary thing. And so you have the ability to do what you want here. And I believe that the largest monument to our country will be made now in the next 5 to 7 years here. And I'm really excited to begin this task.
So where did that inspiration come from to come to Utah? Because you hadn't been here before, right?
No. I went to Texas and I had a very ugly conversation. I thought that Texas was more conservative. And I'm not using this in the political sense of right and left side. I'm using it in the concept of conservare, which means that you conserve sacred values. I thought Texas was all about family, faith, and country. And I was rudely surprised in Fort Worth when I had a conversation with 4 museum directors and the mayor, and it went south. And I came home, and the following week, my wife is friends with Mike Lee and Sharon, and we had a conversation, and Mike Lee said, you need to have a look at Utah. And I flew out to Utah the next week, and I was at Temple Square, and I called Tracy, my wife, on the phone. I said, we're moving here. This is the most sacred place in America.
Wow.
The energy of being in Temple Square is completely American, but it carries the same sacred energy that I witnessed and experienced in Europe. And it's incredible. It's really an opportunity.
Yeah, I remember we traveled to, we've been to Italy several times, but last time I was there and actually walked in and saw the David.
Yeah.
It's an experience,
yes.
right? And it's shocking, the scale of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And just thinking about what must have been going on, and then you go to the Piazza in the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
And you realize that these were inspired individuals.
Yeah. And it's amazing that Leonardo da Vinci's the Mona Lisa and Michelangelo's the David are done in a very short time span in the same place. What was going on in Florence at that time, that something like that could happen? And I believe we can make that happen again. And I believe what I'm going to do is the catalyst that will bring us into that new paradigm.
So let's talk a little bit about this paradigm. What are you hoping to accomplish with this monument?
The monument is called the Grand Liberty Arch Monument, and I think everybody's aware that we have a 250th birthday coming up July 4th of 2026. And I realized that nobody was stepping up and doing something that would have a sense of permanence past that date into the future. And I thought about it, and also it's an evolution. I'm constantly evolving as a human being and trying to grow and better myself. And I thought, you need to do something that speaks about your philosophy. And I realized that my philosophy is very tied to the founding fathers' idea of what this country actually is, the Constitution and the God-given gift of liberty. These are rights that are not available to other people and other citizens in other countries. And I'll give you the prime example of this in my own life. I couldn't draw in 1982. And on September 13th at 7:19, which was sunset, I unveiled that monument, and I had such pride in doing that and such a connection to the audience that I said to myself, you need to do something to give back to your country. And so the seed was planted that night, and then in the fall I continued to think about it, and the idea has developed. And I thought, well, if you made an arch, and what is an arch? An arch is about a new paradigm, and passing through an arch is you're passing into a new value system, but you're upholding the old system, and it's a symbol of victory. It's a symbol of structure. There's so many things that an arch stands for. And you go to a place like the Champs-Élysées and you see this huge arch. Our country needs symbols like that. So it's for me, I wish to make a destination monument that will become something like a Mount Rushmore or a Statue of Liberty, but it's current, and it shows us who we are for the future. And what our country right now is very fraught with division. There's a polarity to it. And so this is my contribution to bring us together under a unified flag. And that's what the World War I Memorial was in terms of all those 38 figures. They're all there underneath the flag. The flag's the high point on that wall. So this is the next step. And I didn't want to just do the same thing. I wanted to go to the next level. I need to do something that I step into and I'm like, can I really pull this off? I need to be challenged as an artist. Makes me more creative.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you kind of go back to, you know, the founding of the country.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been working quite a bit on reestablishing this Western culture.
Yes.
Right? Western civilization and the humanities and you go back to the Greeks and the Romans and you go through history and you can see inspirational things, man communicating with man, but yet really grappling at the concepts of liberty, of justice, of, you know, there's just so much that has built across time that some really want to destroy.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very scary how it happens, because it doesn't happen all at once like a giant coup. It sneaks in. And there's something that happened a few years ago, I believe 2 years ago. There's a very, very large historic museum on Central Park West. It's a natural history museum. It sits between 79th Street and 77th Street. And there's a sculpture there of Teddy Roosevelt. And so very quietly, that sculpture disappeared after a lot of agita for a year and a half. That sculpture was deemed incorrect for DEI ideologies because Teddy Roosevelt, sitting on a horse, is above a Native American and a black man. Completely misunderstood, completely misread as a composition. The Native and the black man represent continents where Teddy Roosevelt fought, hunted, and that was what his thing was, game, fighting, you know, capturing and shooting and killing wild game. And it's like, you miss the whole point. It has nothing to do with about subjugation. It had everything to do with honoring the hierarchy of the President of the United States and that station. And then these two sculptures, they're done incredibly elegantly. They're at least 10 feet high, each of these sculptures, very large, proud figures. The horse comes from the lineage of Verrocchio, which is the sculptor who taught Leonardo how to paint and his craft. And so there's a complete misunderstanding of history, and it's rewritten in a way to destroy history, because then you create a void. Now there's a void in front of that museum.
Right.
And you can rewrite history then according to how you wish the power base to be.
Well,
and that's what I'm fighting.
Well, you know, it's interesting because before we started, you talked about your journey to the Kimball Museum and back to this notion of 1619 and how you were going to display that idea. And what's interesting to me when I think about that, it just hit me, you know, Jamestown was one vision of America, but you know, when Alexis de Tocqueville came to America, he noticed Jamestown, but he focused on Plymouth Rock. And he focused on Plymouth Rock because these people came for a different reason.
Yeah.
They came to reestablish freedom.
Religious freedom.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
against persecution.
Right. And it's a very different vision of what America is, but within that you see the greatness of the ideas that really drove people.
Yes.
And you know, de Tocqueville was here, and you know, one of the interesting things with him is he was wondering why this experiment didn't work in France. Right? And I think he discovered that when he saw the people that came here for religious freedom, and the freedom to worship the way they wanted, right?
Yes.
And it's a very different vision, right?
Yeah.
Very different idea. And so I think that's interesting how this journey of yours took you there, but now you end up in Temple Square.
But the weird part is I was ostracized in the art world because what I did was very traditional, sculpting in the Greco-Roman style, traditionally bronzes, sculptures in small editions for collectors, very esoteric, and beauty mattered, and skill mattered in what I did, and the sense of sacredness mattered because we're built in God's image, and so my sculptures were in praise of that statement, and I was held to the outside by galleries, museums, and critics. I mean, the New York Times wrote an article about me at a gallery show that I was one of the most important figurative artists of the times, to be compared with Rodin. And when Donatello walked the earth, they asked that critic to retract his statement from the New York Times, and he refused to. Dominic Lombardi. It was a long time ago. But it's just, there's this wall and I realized you gotta get past this gate, and that's why I entered into this national global competition for the memorial. It was my way to get through that light, that crack in the door, and expose truth to our citizens. Because that art is very elite, and it's not for general public. It's not for we the people. It's for a small group of people that are actually making money on a system that's rigged with the Sotheby's, where a piece goes up for auction and somebody's already decided they're going to buy it. They set the piece, and then now that collection is worth a hell of a lot more, and they can sell the rest of the pieces at that elevated level. It's a scam. It's a way of money laundering, and there's no place for that in art. To me, like I've said before, to David is sacred art. That's what art is. Make that kind of art. Make art great again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. You know, I had a conversation. I was a professor at the University of Mississippi, and we had a firing line episode, and I went to pick up a guest that I was hosting, and William F. Buckley was sitting by the fire at this bed and breakfast, and I went and sat next to him, and it really put a mark in my soul. Wow. Really.
Wow.
Because we talked about, you know, I knew he was Catholic, and I knew he was a deeply religious person, and we talked about his book God, Man at Yale, and the disappointment he had when he arrived at the university because it had been overtaken. Really, the tradition, the search for light and truth had kind of vanished, right?
Yes.
And you know, this kind of reminds me of what you're talking about there, because this search for meaning, this search for truth, this journey, and you look at American universities today, and a lot of that's gone.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The postmodern philosophers have taken over, and it seems like what you're trying to do is you're expressing the same thing in a different way.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm a builder, so I can do something more than just talk about it. I can actually show you a physical example of what we should be represented by. It's the tip of the spear. The left has been very good at making art that promotes their political ideology. I am not a political person, but the politics of the day have entered into my lane, and now I'm irritated, and I won't allow it. I mean, I have only one life, and I'm really gonna do something with it that is positive. And a lot of this stuff is very destructive because it's about tearing down things, not only monuments, but also values. And so that's not a good thing in a country that was founded on values that are very, very sacred and have been copied by other countries around the globe.
So let's talk a little bit about this monument.
Yeah.
Because I love the idea of this arch, and it sounds like you're trying to build civilization up.
Yes.
right?
It's a civilizational moment that we are at the brink, and we can let civilization just fall to the wayside, or we can rise to the occasion. And if you make monuments like this, and my studio gets going and I make several of these monuments, it's an example of what can be. And why would you make something that's demeaning? That you have life in general, the mundane, you deal with a lot of speed bumps, a lot of crap. Art is not like real life. It's about what's possible. It's not the real world. It's a translation into another sense of sensibility, and it's a guide for other people when they look at it, because it can elevate them. It can hit them in a very visceral way in the chest to make them go home. And after they see the National World War I Memorial, they go home. They have reverence, and that's what's necessary. And it's also a unity of, because history and story are what bring a people together under one culture, and that's what's necessary. You need to make a unifying statement about who we are.
So what was going on in Florence at the time that inspired that?
There's a sense of great pride, and let's think about it. The Medici were the funders of this art. And they did something that is the exact opposite of what previous administrations have done in this country. They said to their citizens, look at how great you are, look at how wonderful and brilliant you can be, and aspire to the level of the divine. What we're seeing now is a sense of like, let's make things that make our citizens afraid. It's a very negative way. It's control, government controlling citizens. And so I'm for the less government in my life, the better off I am. And the Florentines had the right idea to make art that elevated their citizens and gave them a sense of pride. And it's nationalism. It's not this thing that they talk about where you want to conquer the world. No, it's pride in one's country. And that's critical today. It's very critical. And that's what they did, and that's what we should be doing.
So that was the foundation then.
Yes.
That's the thing that really inspired Leonardo and
yes.
and
the magnificence of man. And by man I mean humanity, men and women.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we move forward with this?
We have to build things, and we have to take our schools back. Schools are bubbles that are, proliferating these ideologies that are destructive. You need to create stories and histories that you don't leave out the ugly, because we got plenty of ugly things going on in this country in our history. But history is not about erasing it. It's about learning it, so you do not repeat the same mistakes. It's about the future, and going into the future better off than we were in the past by not repeating those same mistakes. So that means you teach stories that tell about what happened in this country, the good things, and then the most incredible things that we did. And one of the scenes that I wish to portray on this monument is the scene of George Washington with all these different types of men getting into the boat to cross the Delaware to head to Valley Forge for that winter.
You're talking about Leutz's painting.
That's right. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to revere, because that gives us a sense of, wow, I'm an American. I have pride in that. I'm not saying we're perfect, and I'm not saying to ignore that either, but I'm saying don't divide us, bring us together.
So you want to see these ideas really build upon each other,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and the thing that worries me is a lot of what's happening is, first you take care of yourself. You have to make yourself, the responsibility, the agency, self-agency is very important, that you are responsible for yourself, and then your family, your spouse, your children, and then your community, and then your state, and it goes from that way out. It doesn't go with, oh, I'm going to take care of the globe. That's complete nonsense. It's virtue signaling. You take care of yourself first. You rise. And that's the ripple effect that we need to do as a country.
What are some of the other inspirational things that you're thinking about in terms of building this?
The monument is also, first off, it's storytelling. And storytelling is what binds all of us together. It's our story, and it brings a sense of ownership for Salt Lake and the country. And I believe this could be a template for the rest of the states to see what's possible. I'm very enthusiastic about Salt Lake because in Salt Lake, they get the job done. Things are done with a sense of correctness. There's a sense of kindness. There's an underlying fabric because of its founding fathers, the Mormons, that brought a sense of sacredness and God. And that still permeates the society here. I'm well aware of it because I've only been here 4 weeks. So
you're really kind of discerning that as you talk to people and as you visit.
And there's a beauty and an expansiveness to the sky that you do not have in a place like New York City, where you are trapped within these skyscraper canyons. So you're basically looking down at yourself. There's not a lot of sunlight, and you're trapped within a space. So this sense of expansion and limitlessness sets up the whole paradigm of manifesting anything that you desire as long as you do the work. And so this monument is a statement about that. It's our history, but it's also a statement about building things, bringing back the sense of accomplishment. And I think building things, Salt Lake, I mean, it's incredible how many things are just, it's speed of light, the expansion that's going on here. It's not set. There's no ceiling.
Right. We're going to take a break, and we'll come right back.
Thank you.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today, because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We're talking with Sabin Howard, and we had a great discussion during the break. Let's just talk, kind of bring this back to what do we need to do as a population in Utah to help with this renaissance?
Well, the first step for me is to connect with big institutions or families that want to get involved financially, because you have to pay to make art. You need to get the artist in the studio, and then I have to bring in a lot of models and pose them and get an idea. So I'll have to go through an iteration process that can take easily 6 to 9 months. And so that's the first step, and then that iteration process then has to be turned into a three-dimensional model. And then that three-dimensional model has to be turned into a full-scale monument. So these are steps that then we use technology to move it along, but then we have to build it. And so I came on the podcast to share this idea because for me, it's really not about me. It's more about like being a catalyst and doing something to give back. The biggest thing that happened when I did the World War I Memorial was that I learned from the veterans what it means to be in service of. And it gave me much greater purpose, because it was no longer just an artistic endeavor in the studio. It was a monument for we the people, given to the citizens of this country. And so this, to me, gives me great joy and hope, because it goes back to where I grew up in Italy, where you go into public places, and those public places are for the citizens of that community. So I think that Utah is already fertile in terms of its values about family and God and country. And it is prime ground to be inventive and creative and bring back that spirit, the spirit of the West, of limitlessness. Anything's possible.
Yeah. It's a fabulous idea. This whole idea of the new renaissance of art.
Yeah.
This could be a center for that, right? and just like Florence.
You imagine, yeah, that Salt Lake becomes the modern Rome of the United States. Like, I'm not going to say I'm Bernini, but Bernini changed the landscape of all of Rome by his style, was emulated by all these other artists. And if you go to Rome, you go see St. Peter's Square and the Basilica, and you see then all these other churches like Il Gesù and Santa Susanna and Santa Maria Maggiore. They're all done in the style of Bernini, and they're incredible. You enter into they're beacons of hope and light and truth. And I live in Draper right now in an Airbnb, and I see the temple, the Draper Temple on top of the hill at night with the light coming off it in the darkness, and you have no idea how much that touches my soul to see that. It's such a beacon of hope for me.
Yeah, it's back to that whole idea of light and truth, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the beacon.
This is the land of hope. That is what hope is. Faith, and I have tremendous faith because I'm not here alone. I'm supported by something way larger than myself, the sacred.
And this is a way of expressing the sacred, right?
Yeah. The monuments are a physical manifestation of the sacred and those ideas. And if you bring people into those spaces, whether they realize it or not, they're transformed for the better.
Yeah, Western civilization survived because it actually found the beauty.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What's great? What lifts us to a higher space?
Yeah. I guess.
Rather than put us into bondage, right?
Yeah.
That's liberty. That's freedom, right?
It's saying yes. And look, freedom is scary because freedom, now you're responsible for your own life. You're not handing over your God-given gift of life to someone else to decide for you. So you have to stand in places that are uncomfortable. And when change occurs, you go through fear and anxiety. But those are welcome things in my life because that means I'm on the correct path. A lot of people, when they get into that space, will fall off because they think, well, I hit a speed bump, I'm not on the right path. No, you have to hang in that space a little bit longer.
Who are some inspirational figures for you from the past?
Well,
that you think about?
I have read every single book on Michelangelo, and I have conversations in my head with Michelangelo. He's one of my guides. And one of the reasons being is because some of the things that I had to go through in terms of like passing through the gates in Washington, D.C., the bureaucratic process of 2 commissions, first the Centennial Commission and then the Commission of Fine Arts, and then the idea of financing a monument and having to fight to get paid and having a lawyer so I could get the right contract, are exactly the same things that he went through with the popes in Rome and the Medici as well. It wasn't an easy thing, except they're not like looking to find me and kill me like they were trying to do with him. So it's a little bit easier for me than Michelangelo. But a lot of the same things happen. And that's also why I look at him as an example of what's possible. Like this next monument, this Grand Liberty Arch that will now come to Salt Lake, there was no commission that came to me. It was an idea. It was something that I was inspired by making the last one.
Isn't that a commission?
Yeah, it's not a commission.
But it's a commission from on high.
Yes.
Right?
Right. So isn't that what the Sistine Chapel is?
Yeah.
It's a commission from, I have to say this, I saw a billboard on 15 going south last week. It said, "Trust in God, not government." That's where my heart is.
Right. Yeah. Well, to think of this arch coming up,
Yeah.
that really represents the best in humanity.
Yeah.
Right. The humanities across time.
With the history of our country and the history of Salt Lake as well, because this is a very important history for the rest of the lower 48 states. I mean, think about it. Traversing the whole country, very hostile environment, and then ending up that this is the place, Monument Park, and saying this is the place, and it's incredible. Those are the things that need to be remembered.
Yeah, they stopped. They stopped in the desert.
Yeah.
They could have gone to California, which was much more beautiful, right? Already.
It's incredible. We don't learn about those things I did back 45 years ago in high school, but is that taught today? No, it's all this stuff about, like, this group and that group and how this is an oppressor and this is a victim. It's like, stop with this. It's getting old. It's not helping anyone.
Yeah,
Agency.
who does it help?
It doesn't help anybody. It's about power grabs. It's about creating fear within the citizens of our country. It's not a good thing.
Whereas light and truth really leads us to...
It elevates everybody.
Yeah.
First off, we are all Americans. All of us are Americans. I look at someone else, I don't think about, like, what gender are they? What race are they? What religion are they? That's complete nonsense. It's like, that's an American. Look at it that way. Start from the big picture. Don't go into, like, this myopic way of look. It's called judging a book by its cover. It's so racist, the DEI mentality.
And this is really trying to elevate us to a bigger place.
Look at us as a unified community and proceed forward. And look, if you continually go after your problems get bigger. So I've had a pretty difficult life. I'm not bitching and moaning about it, but all the speed bumps that I have faced have tempered my steel and made me a better man, a better human. And I accepted them as part of my path. It was a challenge to become who I'm supposed to become. And that's what we need to do. You cannot go back. I can't go back and say, well, I remember when that kid beat me up and punched me in the nose like 56 years ago in 2 days. No, it's ridiculous. It's like, it was part of growing up, and I got through it, and I learned something.
I thought that was interesting that you remembered the very moment when you decided that you were going to pivot.
It's the dividing line in my life where I had no purpose, and then all of a sudden I had a purpose. And the purpose was divinely driven. And I was more of an atheist back then at age 19. I didn't believe in God the way I do now, but you mature, you grow. But I did have a great sense of the value of the beautiful and the sacred, because that's what I had witnessed for those first 19 years of my life.
And that's why you came to Salt Lake, to find the beautiful and the sacred, right?
Yeah.
To build it in a way, right?
Yes.
To reimagine that idea.
If we build it, they will come.
Yeah, it's true, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is wonderful. It's really good to get to know you, Sabin, and I really wish you the best of luck. It's not just luck, though. It's because you're guided, right?
Yeah.
But
luck is made. It's not just random. It's like you continually open doors and you shake hands and you try to find what do we have in common? What are our differences? No, don't think that. What do we have in common? Yeah. And the more you connect with the universe around you, the more opportunities come to you.
Yeah. I used to tell my students that luck favors the prepared mind.
Very much.
Right?
Incredibly so.
And so
yeah.
I think that's a good lesson. And I look forward to further discussions about this as you move along.
So. Hell yeah. Can't wait.
Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Actually, an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next week.